Joining me now to discuss this proposed stimulus bill and more is physician and Republican Congressman from Tennessee, a member of the House Oversight Committee, Mark Green. He joins us from Washington. Congressman, I want to go through some of what's in this proposed bill from Democrats. It has nearly $1 trillion for states, cities, and tribal governments to avert layoffs. The bill will offer a fresh round of $1,200 direct cash aids to individuals, up to $6,000 per household. The bill will also launch a $175 billion housing assistance fund to help pay rents and mortgages, which would continue through January. It also adds $75 billion more for virus testing. What do you make of the Democrats' proposed $3 trillion stimulus plan? Is this what we need now?
We definitely do not need this now. We haven't even spent the $2 trillion that's in the CARES Act. A little frustrated. I think I heard Nancy Pelosi the other day say on MSNBC that this was an opportunity for them to push their vision forward. Well, I don't see this as an opportunity. We've got tens of thousands of Americans who've died. I mean, more than actually died in the Vietnam War. So I don't know if Pelosi sees that as an opportunity, but it's pretty ridiculous. This is a crisis, and it's not a chance for them to push their progressive vision for America. Like I said, we've got $2 trillion that we haven't even spent in our previous passages, and one of them, part of that CARES Act was $765 billion for state and local governments, and they haven't even spent that. So this is just crazy. It's them pandering to their base. It's really bad for America.
I want to read you something. The Fed chairman said this week, the economic damage is without historical precedent from this pandemic, and without more aid, it will deepen and prolong. So economists say we aren't doing enough for small businesses. Are they correct?
Well, the PPP program has substantially helped our small businesses, and there's money in the CARES Act, particularly as it relates to the larger corporations, that hasn't even been spent yet. So debt is also going to paralyze this country if we aren't careful. And the Fed chief may be right about the impact, but the best way to fix it is to open the economy and get America going again. That puts people back to work. It gives dignity with a job, and it gets our economy roaring again. I mean, Donald Trump's the right guy. He did it once. He'll do it again. We just have to open back up.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said this about the proposed stimulus plan. I want you to listen.
Sure.
Look, I mean, we can't spend enough money to prop this economy up forever. People need to be able to begin to be productive again. That obviously means that you need to move forward consistent with the guidelines that have been laid down by the healthcare professionals toward opening up the economy. It's the only solution to the dilemma with which we are confronted.
So should we be focused on testing and reopening these economies up, these states?
Well, first, let me just say this. We in Tennessee and several other states are already open. And you look at the data coming out of Georgia, they opened up the earliest, I think April the 24th. And their hospitalizations have decreased. Their total case numbers have decreased. Their deaths have decreased. So absolutely, we've got to get opened back up and get going. That's the only solution. As a physician, we make decisions based on a cost-benefit ratio. And to flatten the curve, we shut down the economy, and that was a good idea. The benefit and the cost ratio worked out. Now the goalpost is moved, Raymond, and they're talking about no transmission of the virus. Well, the cost-benefit ratio of that is just crazy. You can't sustain that, and the downstream costs are lives too. I mean, keeping cancer diagnosis and biopsies from happening, it's already predicted we're going to have 33,000 extra dead Americans from cancer because of the delays. They want more of that? That's crazy.
It's terrifying. And I'm glad you mentioned Florida and Georgia, both of which opened early and quickly. Georgia's rate of cases, COVID cases, have fallen since last week by 12%. Florida's down 14%. So the promises of a second wave or an explosion of cases once an economy opened, it doesn't seem to be bearing out. Why do you think that's the case, Doctor? We keep hearing from Dr. Fauci and others that second wave's coming. It's coming.
Well, I think I think what we'll ultimately find out when we do more serologic testing is that the virus has penetrated our country pretty heavily already. If you look at the serologic testing, and I understand there's a lot of criticism about the validity of some of these tests, but if you look at the Santa Clara County one in California, the Los Angeles County one in California, you look at some in Europe, you look at the one in New York that showed 14% of people tested had already been infected by the virus. Miami-Dade County, maybe the raw numbers themselves aren't as reliable as we'd like them to be, but one thing is absolutely for certain, that this virus is more prevalent in our society, in our country, than we originally thought, meaning the mortality rate is significantly less than what they're calculating right now based on the case fatality rate. And that means opening up is not the risk that some people are asserting that it is.
To those who suggest waiting to move forward on a stimulus plan, Speaker Pelosi said this. I want your reaction.
There are those who said, let's just pause. But the families who are suffering know that hunger doesn't take a pause, the rent doesn't take a pause, the bills don't take a pause, the hardship of losing a job or tragically losing a loved one doesn't take a pause.
Your thoughts, Congressman Green?
Conflating the deaths and the economic challenge. Yeah, I get very frustrated when the left does that. It's just not fair. It's not right. If people who want to pay their rent have a job, they can pay their rent. So the quicker we get the economy open, that's the solution. It's both the near-term and the long-term solution. It's the right thing to do. And this notion that, I don't know, some of the states, Oregon, mid-summer, end of summer, it is absurd to think that they're going to keep their economy shut down that long. I know when Elon Musk was threatening to move his plant, here in Tennessee, we were reaching out to him to try to get him to come. So they continue to do this. They're going to destroy their economies. And those states like, Tennessee and Georgia and Florida, we'll get all their industry.
Well, it looks like some of these cities are going to be in deep hibernation until the fall, maybe till the end of the year. There is concern, we've heard it from Dr. Fauci and other health experts, that as the states begin to reopen, there'll be spikes in COVID cases, and some cities might have to shut down again. Should there be some stimulus plan, just in case, a recovery fund for those who might need it? Could you dedicate funds to that purpose, for businesses, for individuals?
We can vote money very quickly. So having some fund set aside is unnecessary. And when government does that, it usually gets spent. So the best thing for us to do is, if there is this rare case where a community has an increase and it looks as if it's going to max out their hospital and ICU beds and ventilators, then we can respond. But there's no reason to set that money aside now. It'll just get spent.
Congressman, in your opinion, should spending cuts accompany these stimulus bills? I'm stunned by the lack of concern about our debt. I mean, these stimulus bills are as big as our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. The issue's always been in our country spending. Our debt has always been an issue of spending. It's not an issue of revenue. I mean, Trump proved that when he cut taxes, just like with Reagan, just like with Kennedy, just like with Calvin Coolidge, that you actually get an increase in overall revenue. So our problem is not, the revenue side. It is a spending side, and we have got to get some controls, or we're going to be in huge trouble. This is clearly going to be a big setback in that regard, and we did spend a lot of money. What we don't need to do is, without even spending all of the CARES Act money, vote for more money to be spent on this. So absolutely, the debt's a long-term issue, and the only way to fix it is to cut spending.
You've been asked to serve on this Congressional Committee on the Coronavirus Crisis created by Speaker Pelosi. You're the only doctor on that committee. What do you make of it, and what have the hearings been about so far?
Well, we've had one hearing, and the committee's taken, basically one action, and that was to send a letter out to various businesses that took PPP money, and it somehow offended the Democrats that they took this money. A company like a steel company in Ohio and Pennsylvania, they're bashing Americans. They're bashing Americans who are creating jobs, companies that are out there hiring Americans and got the PPP money. By the way, in accordance with the law that those very Democrats voted on and helped write, instead of focusing the ire of this committee on where the problem started, and that's China. I just saw an article the other day that said, had China notified the world just 1 week sooner, 66% of the deaths could have been avoided. If you do the 66% of our current deaths in America, that's about 57,000 dead Americans who would not be dead had China just spoken up 1 week earlier. And the first thing the Democrats attack are American companies. If that doesn't tell you who the Democrat Party, the senior leadership of the Democrat Party is, nothing else does.
There have been over 16,000 cases and 273 deaths to date from COVID in Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's already begun to reopen. Has there been a significant increase in the COVID cases there since reopening? Do you know?
We have had a spike at one of our jails, one of our state facilities, and that makes it look like there's a spike. If you take out that one, facility where everybody, sort of was
is in close contact.
Yeah, then no, there's been no spike.
Wow, amazing. Congressman Mark Green, we will stay in touch. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show, sir.